Welcome to the Catacomic Machine. My name is Matt, and this is the second of several short talks taken from AAR that we're publishing over the coming weeks. In this one, you'll hear a very short talk given by Mary Jane Rubenstein as part of the new Materialism, Religion, and Planetary Thinking seminar. I'm hoping to have her on the show at some point. We'll see what happens. And if any of you have suggestions for guests, let us know. Send us a message either on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Anyway, if you're not familiar with Mary Jane, do yourself a favor, get on YouTube and check out some of her stuff there. Or you could read her books, which are great too. And I'll link to her author page in the show notes. All right, here's Mary Jane.
Okay, I wrote out something because I was concerned about going on for too long and even more concerned about not going on long enough. So the paper I've circulated is the product of two lines of inquiry. The first stems from a book I'm currently writing on pantheism, and the second stems from this seminar's collective concern to illuminate the recently rehabilitated and theoretically chic categories of immanence and materiality. Traditionally, one of the most consistent objections to the heresy designated as pantheism is that it ascribes materiality to divinity, allegedly making the latter into something mutable, degraded, incarnate, corruptible, limited, passive, and derivative. And of course, divinity ought to be everything those things are not. So even though they tend not to care about the God question, when the new materialists seek to rehabilitate matter, they're seeking to unlink it from some of these associations and to transvalue the others. This paper focuses on the work of an underattended philosophical predecessor to these efforts. And as such, it could be heard as joining the chorus of the authors who question the newness of the new materialists. But it could also be heard as joining the chorus of the new materialists themselves in the base section, perhaps, as helping to ground the new materialist project by revisiting the specific associations it is trying to dislodge. That's the Aristotle part of the paper, the part that says, like, what do we mean when we keep saying, like, oh, the Western dualism, the Western, like, where does that come from? How is it hammered out in Aristotle? Let's head back to it. And by locating a surprisingly early deconstruction of these associations in the almost universally overlooked work of Giordano Bruno. So a quick reminder, Aristotle encodes matter as passive and inert, lying in wait for form to give it something to be. Matter is potential rather than actual, negative rather than positive, female rather than male, and while we're at it, ugly rather than beautiful. At the same time, however, Aristotle insists against Plato that it is incoherent to call form independent from matter, since without matter, form would have nothing to form. Following this line of thinking, Aristotle calls matter the ultimate substratum, that which lies back behind any instance of being at all. And it's here that Aristotle's matter, however denigrated, begins to edge apophatically into the category of divinity, an edging that Aristotle himself polices by flinging his God to the edge of the universe and installing him safely beyond the fixed stars. If Aristotle tries to ignore this slippage between materiality and divinity, Bruno exploits it, working within Aristotelian categories to demonstrate the primacy, animacy, and ultimately perhaps even divinity of matter. Bruno does this in a particularly rambunctious and cranky dialogue by running alongside Aristotle until he reaches matter as an ultimate substratum. And then by reading this ultimacy back against matter's persistent Aristotelian denigration as passive, derivative, inert, and almost nothing. Delightfully, Bruno diagnoses this incoherence as the product of philosophical sexism. Frankly stated, philosophers hate matter because they hate women, whom they associate with privation, corruptibility, secondariness, insatiability, and evil. Even more delightfully, Bruno goes on, both with and against the Aristotelians, to insist upon matter's primacy and creativity without asserting the maleness typically associated with these qualities. Rather, he strategically retains matter's femininity in order to transvalue it, shifting the operative metaphoric register from one of missionary receptivity in Aristotle to one of pregnant productivity. As the condition of possibility of all that is, matter is the mother of all things, but not in the manner, say, of Plato's chora, which is nothing without the operation of the male demiurge. Rather, Bruno's maternal materiality is herself the principle of creation, at once singular, insofar as there's ultimately only one substance, and multiple, insofar as the substance is necessarily expressed in and as the material run of all things, and Spinoza sort of takes off from here. Finally, insofar as this single multimodal materiality in Bruno is also necessarily spiritual, it means that everything it becomes is ensouled, that there is something of material formal animacy in all things, including rocks and clogs and mountains and boots. Hence, Bruno's universal animacy, the straightforward corollary of his nearly feminist and even more nearly almost pantheist analysis. I say it's nearly feminist because although it deconstructs categorical sexism, it says nothing about the living conditions of actual people who are positioned as raced, sexed, and gendered others. And I say it's even more nearly pantheist because although the dialogue insists it's not speaking of God, it nevertheless attributes to materiality every characteristic we traditionally attribute to divinity, including ultimacy, anteriority, supreme creativity, omnipersonality, and indeed the coincidence of every opposite as he's channeling Cusa. And because we know from the apophatics that if there is any way to speak about God, not doing so would be the most reliable way to do so. Oh.